It's great to see a lot of you here. I'm happy to see actually some people assembled that are from various parts of the field and parts of my work life. So thanks for coming. I do have a little bit of a sort of a story to tell, but I decided that it's best for me to tell the story and then pause during the story so that your questions can come in sort of at the time when you think of them. Because it is sort of a journey, and I think that would probably, I'd like it to just kind of be a dialogue to the degree that it can with a lot of people. So yeah, just go ahead and, if you have something, put it in the comment. I'll notice. We'll be very informal. So it's a really, this is sort of my first opportunity to take a look back like this in a community of what's been happening. I've been kind of nose to the grindstone and in lockdown now for 2 months. I pretty much, this project came about in a way that was very organic, very immediate, and quite urgent. And it has really grown. And it's sort of strange to think that it's grown because I've basically just been here in my apartment for 2 months. So I'd like to talk a little bit. The title of the talk is Building Community. And I think that I would like to sort of talk about that aspect of the project from that point of view. So I'm going to take a look here. Actually, this is the first thing. Here's a little thing. You guys can, I'm sure, see my screen now. Here are a few sort of questions I put together for us to consider. What does it mean to build community? Who are my communities? And what do they need? And, it's interesting because the mission of Next Best Connects is very similar to the mission of a course that I was teaching that was interrupted at the New School at Manus School of Music in the New School called Composing a Creative Life. It's a entrepreneurialism class that I teach every spring as part of the Philip Glass Institute. And I had this semester, I had a textile artist, I had a playwright, so it's not just musicians. And what we usually do is we talk about how making work is always something, if you do larger scale work and if you do participatory work, which of course in music we almost always are doing because there are already performers, composers, conductors, if you're doing large ensembles. Everybody who's there helping you build your work is there for a reason. Everyone is a stakeholder, and there's a reason that they do what they do. And sometimes that reason is money, but of course people could do a variety of things for money. Why are they doing this for money? Let's say, for example, that I have a bunch of young people participating in a project. Those people are not getting paid. Why are their parents stakeholders? Why are the donors who support our activities as artists, why are they stakeholders? What are people's stake in our projects? And of course, that's actually kind of there couldn't in some ways be a better time for us to be thinking about that. The word stakeholders seems a little harsh for the reality that we're all in right now. Really, it's about community, but the questions are the same. What are the communities that I am in, and what do they need? I was doing an interview earlier today, and I was talking about how, I live a block from the hospital here in Manhattan, and I live by myself. So I haven't really gotten a whole lot of, there's not a lot of buffer here between me and what's been going on. I see the medical workers every day. I can see how fatigued they are. I can see what's going on at the hospital. And, in a sort of very acute time of need, I walked my 2 N95 masks over to the hospital, and they wouldn't take them because, of course, this sort of desire to help in some way that could, that was obviously not the way that I could help. But one thing that was clear right away was that the students that were studying with me, their studies were interrupted. I was supposed to be coaching chamber music. There were other educators that I know who also were supposed to be conducting courses or who were supposed to be teaching a variety of kinds of interactive lessons. And so there was a community that was immediately affected by the lockdown in mid-March. That I was very much a part of. There were also musicians who lost work, including myself. I lost an enormous amount of work. And in fact, I was supposed to be touring and I had a very busy spring. Suddenly I had nothing going on. And I also had started to talk to the Kaufman Music Center, who's the lead partner on this project, about doing another project that seemed like it was actually suddenly going to be impossible to do. So there were also donors. This is kind of jumping back down here, but people who give money to projects, who want to see those projects happen, and all of a sudden, here we were on this journey together, and the projects are not able to happen. There were music lovers and audiences who lost their live performances, and they wanted to find things to listen to. There are organizations who lost programming and wanted to find a way, including summer festivals, finding ways to interact with participants and create work together without being able to be in person. There's also, of course, the fact that there are people in our community who are experiencing grief and frustration and loneliness. So all these things kind of came together at once, and because of the sort of the work that I had been doing, as Peter mentioned, with these broadcast projects. I had been making a series of pieces called broadcasts, or Airfield Broadcasts, which were a couple of large-scale pieces for hundreds of musicians that play on former airfields that are now public parks. And these, of course, are exactly the kind of projects that involved bringing a lot of people together in a small space, which we can't do right now. However, they did involve bringing together a broad variety of people, professionals, amateurs, and students, in a kind of a process that was very interactive and participatory. And they also used a kind of a way of interacting with groups at all different levels that was very porous and influenced the material itself. So I was able to pivot to some degree and begin thinking about a project that would enable me to create new work with the participation of my various communities that needed to be connected with each other. So this is sort of the way in which I'm going to talk through this today and think about this talk. So broadcast from home. I'm going to show you the actual web page, which some of you will also get a chance to see. This is the web page as it is now, and as you can see, there are a number of aspects of it. Here's the chapter that just went up about an hour ago. Just finished this one, chapter 8.
Lisa?
Yeah.
I think you need to share a different screen unless somebody's seeing something that I'm not seeing. We're still seeing the outline.
Right, of course. See, this is all the various skills that we need to learn.
We're now all Zoom members.
Yeah, right. Here we go. How about that? Is that better?
That's the SoundCloud page.
Yeah. No, this is all on the same page here. So this is the web page for Broadcast from Home. And as you can see here, the chapters. Is this working now?
Yeah.
Good.
This is good.
So these are the chapters, including the one that we finished today, we posted today. And as you can see, they have the dates when they've been posted. We've been doing this every week, pretty much since the crisis hit. But here is where the testimonies are submitted. So anybody, like as soon as we finish this, you can go here and submit a testimony. You just click on this thing and here are all these people's testimonies. And this is where they've come from. We've gotten testimonies now from 5 continents. And this is where you can go if you want to sing the phrases that I'm writing. So this is where you're able to contribute your voices. And these are all the people who've contributed their voices. So this is something you all can peruse later, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how it all came to be and how these communities, these various communities and their needs really shaped the way the project unfolded. So initially, right in the beginning, we had, as I mentioned, the Mannes School of Music. There were a bunch of students that I was working with there. I think I see one of you here today. And we had to figure out a way to do a chamber piece together. And so I proposed that we turn some of these things into an opportunity to interact with each other in this way that would be asynchronous. So I would never be requiring players to try to line up and play together on Zoom. I didn't want to propose a process by which musicians would be trying to approximate a situation that we were all sort of mourning the loss of, which was being in a room together and playing. I wanted to come up with a process that wouldn't make us feel sort of all kind of locked into our screens. So what I proposed that I would do is I proposed that I would write little phrases, tiny phrases that are not actually part of scores, but are just phrases on their own that can be manipulated in a variety of ways. So for example, here are the vocal phrases, right, for chapter 3. There are always Roman numerals here. They're little phrases, and I might not use them in this order. And I do this for the players as well. This is chapter 3. This is the xylophone part. There are always things like repeat these as many times as you want. And this is also, this is a percussionist who's at home. Like, I don't know what he has at home. Maybe he has some things at home. Gentle objects that you might have at home. Contrasting household objects. So these are all just these little sound objects. Here I say, okay, do this as many times as you want. Use these pitches and make blurt-like fast phrases. Hit stuff. This is a great kid. He's in 10th grade. So I wanted to give him some things like this to do. So these are the sort of ways in which I invite the participants, the instrumentalists, who are missing music making, right, to be able to be sort of creative at home and to have an experience that's not so much bound to trying to make it work online, but that can be something that allows them to just sort of be in their music and send it to me, and whatever it is, I'll use it. So what does that mean? That means that the process of composing this piece is really unlike any other process that I've had before. Because rather than making a score and then having parts and then having the performers realize the score, I guess I probably would say I do around 40% of the composing in advance. And it looks like this, usually, which is obviously only for me, because who can make any sense of that? But this is me sort of figuring out what little phraselets might actually work together. I don't know exactly how they're going to work together, but I know that if they're in the same language, that they're probably going to work together. These things could work with those things. This is a 3, could work with other things that have a 3 by them. This thing could work with that thing. So I start with that, and then I create from that, I create the vocal phrase documents, and my colleague Greg Pernhagen, who's a lovely baritone, he sings the men's parts and I sing the women's parts. And we upload teaching tracks to the webpage so that people who don't read music can still participate and sing at home. So meanwhile, what are they singing? This is a very important thing. A very important part of this project is that people are actually not just contributing their voices at the website, but they're also contributing testimonies. And this is something that's been very important for the project in its building community role. These are prompts, and I've been working with a professor of comparative literature at Oberlin named Claire Solomon, and she has been helping me come up with prompts that are also on the website that make it possible for people who are maybe not writers, but they want to share what they're experiencing. The prompts are sort of a time-honored way of getting people to helping them to guide their writing and to open their creativity. So these are the prompts. You can see the dates. We have new prompts for last week. These prompts have to do with reopening. As things change, we realize that people may need to be sharing different kinds of things. These testimonies go up on the website but they come to me directly. And then every week I take them and I sort of see how people are doing. At this point, I've had around almost 90 testimonies, and they've come from all over the world. And so some people in some parts of the world are doing one way, while other people in other parts of the world are doing another way. Last week I heard from both Brazil and Australia. And so it's people's experiences are quite different. But what's interesting is that there are some feelings, some emotional things, and some cognitive things that are very similar. So one of the things that became clear really early on was that the emotional journey that we were on was one that was going to give me a very different set of sort of tones, emotional tones that I felt I needed to honor. The first chapter, I'm going to play a little bit of a few of these, but the first chapter was pretty much just about the shock that we all felt. Suddenly here we were alone at home or with others, suddenly in a place not really able to do the things. Why wasn't I doing the things that I usually do when I'm at home? I'm not cleaning closets or reading or why am I not listening to music? And by week 2, by chapter 2, there was already incredible loss. And so chapter 2 is dedicated to somebody that I knew that died of the virus. I knew him years ago. And this was something that we were all sort of processing together, and it was starting to come up also in the testimonies as well. By chapter 3, which is really kind of at the height of the sort of the real crisis feeling in New York, there was a sense of being really nervous and pent up, and people were really irritable. They were very disgruntled. They were really irritated at each other and lashing out at each other. And I found it really interesting how many people were actually complaining. I saw that as being sort of a fear to some degree. So for example, this is a vocal part here. I did something in chapter 3 for the first time that I've been doing every week since, which is that in the vocal parts, there's always a segment where people are invited to contribute their own text also. So here I asked singers to sing any of these phrases, which were actually from the testimonies, on any note, which means that I was getting harmonic information, right? I was getting pitch information that I didn't know what that was going to be. But I wanted them to sing on any note because I wanted them to sing on whatever note made them feel the most expressive. And I would deal with it later in the composing process, which would take place after I received all of the audio. And what I realized was in week 3, I realized that absolutely everybody, every week, there were people who in fact did add their own words. It's been happening every week. So every time now that I have, that I do a chapter, there's always a segment, and now it's actually always the first segment, the first of the Roman numerals, where people are invited to actually amplify the testimonies, right, by sort of giving an impromptu testimony of their own when they're actually recording these. So these get recorded however people want to. They record them at home, upload them on the cell phone. I had, when we did, I'm going to play you a little bit of chapter 3 in a moment. Chapter 3 invited people to shout because there was a lot of pent-up energy. And I also ended up using, because on my fire escape here, of course, every day at 7 p.m., we bang pot lids and make a lot of noise to celebrate the frontline workers. And so I recorded that on April 19th, which was the height of the crisis, and right here in this neighborhood. And I incorporated that audio as well. So I'm going to play you a little bit of the end of chapter 3, and that will be a chance to hear what you're looking at here. I'm going to start pretty much right at the point where people start singing very fast using these phrases or adding their own disgruntled phrases. So hopefully this will work out okay for me to play this for you. Here we go.
Looks like themselves right now. Careless people in their 20s and 30s aren't wearing masks and won't stand far enough away.
Everyone wants to go back to school. There's starting on a
Why are people hoarding and wasting? Careless people in their 20s and 30s aren't wearing masks and won't stand far enough away. Across from you. Next to you. Behind you. Next to you. Behind you. Across from you. Next to you. Behind you. In front of you.
in front of you.
Across from you.
Across from you.
Next to you. Behind you. In front of you.
So that's the end of chapter 3, and you can hear there, I just switched over so you could see the percussionist part. I gave him sort of free rein to just kind of go crazy there, and the players all got a chance to yell as well. As it turns out, the chapter that I posted today also includes field audio because it's sounding different out there at 7 p.m. So I incorporated a little bit of the field audio from last week, just get a sense for what it's sounding like on my fire escape. This chapter was the first one that used the players from Face the Music, which is a wonderful high school, a new music group that's through the Kaufman Music Center. And I started getting that feeling that I always get when I work with amateurs and students and advanced players and professionals all together, a chance to kind of reach out to them, see what they come up with, sort of stimulate creativity. And then as I mentioned, 40% of the composing process happens in advance, but the other 60% of the composing process happens afterwards, happens after I get all the recordings back. So I'm going to show you just a little bit of chapter 4, which ended up being the largest one. So it turns out a chorus, the University of South Florida found the project, and suddenly, like the night before this was due, around 40 singers submitted all at once. So that was kind of incredible. So this is, I'm going to show you what the composing process actually takes place in Pro Tools. And this is chapter 4, which has all of these singers from the University of South Florida, these instruments. These are players from Manus. And as you can see, these are the phrases. I line them up. Sometimes I use them in different places. The composing process ends up being a matter of actually sort of auditioning these fragments and moving them around. Even the actual structure, the order in which things unfold in the piece does not get determined in advance, because the actual timbre, the grain of people's voices when they contribute really affects the way I pace and organize the material. So this just gives you sort of a sense of what it looks like. This is the largest one. I'm going to play you a little bit of this chapter 4 in a second. It was the first time that I started to solve some problems that I really enjoyed working on with the players. One of the things that we discovered is that, of course, when you're doing chamber music in a room with other people, there are all kinds of tiny little tuning, you're constantly tuning. Every microsecond, you're making adjustments to each other, and phrasing together. And that's something that we really can't do with the kind of nuance that we miss. So, and that's true with rhythm as well, phrasing. So I came up with this solution in chapter 4 with the players, but I think really worked really well. The first thing I decided was that I would have one player, in this case it was the cellist because he was the lowest of the string trio. I would have him play a bunch of, just a bunch of sonorous, lovely, big double stops. And the reason I'm having him do double stops is that this enables him to be in tune with himself. So this is what I had him do here. I had him lay down these, and then I told him to do this at any tempo in this very, very broad range of tempos. And I told all of the string players to do this broad range of tempos. But I had the cellist upload his recording first so that other people could listen to it. And when I tell them now, I do this every week, I have somebody upload a tuning track. I say, this is the tuning track. Go online, listen to it while you're making a salad or something. Get it in your head. Just listen to it. Get that tonal center in your head, and then leave it, turn it off, and go in your living room and just play. So that people are not trying to tune to it while they hear it. They just are kind of absorbing it and hearing that and having that tone center in their minds as they play. I also discovered in this chapter that rather than try to align things, which was going to be frustrating for everybody and me also, why not have sort of propulsive forward motion by giving players a really broad range of kinds of tempos that they could use, and then using them in combination with one another and seeing what comes up, what they come up with, what kinds of, sometimes things come back and they're exactly the same tempo as some singer from Florida, and then that's a duet. That happened once. I had like a piccolo baritone duet because they ended up doing something exactly the same kind of rhythm and exactly the same speed. So this is sort of a chance element. This lets that element take some of that control away from me, but also open up the player's experience at home and make it possible for people to feel more like they're playing music and not trying to fit in a box. I'm going to play you a little bit of chapter 4 here so you can hear how this works with these various phrases. This was also, so this is the largest group of people that I had. This was right at the end of the semester for the University of South Florida University Singers. And so I had all of them, and then I also had the players from Manus and a bunch of other singers too. This was the first week that I was able to hire some professional singers who had also lost a lot of work, and I was able to bring together a few professionals as well. And this was also the week that I got a beautiful testimony from Nairobi, Kenya, which was at that point, I think our first, or maybe our second international submission, a woman who was saying that she would love to walk across town with her friends and haggle over prices and then hug them goodbye. And this one is called I Miss All That. This chapter is called I Miss All That. And the participatory aspect of it was that I invited singers to say what they missed. They had to sing certain things that the testimonies, that were quotes from the testimonies of what people miss. But then there was an opening for singers to sing what they miss as well. So you're going to hear the last section of this. You'll hear how the sort of propulsive energy of the string player is using radically different tempos, how it moves it forward. You'll hear the tuning, how the tuning tracks work. I didn't fix any of this artificially. This is all the players just listening to the tuning track first, then turning it off, setting it aside, and recording on their own. So this is a part of chapter 4, around a couple minutes of chapter 4, which is actually around 5 minutes long.
The faces of people on the street.
So it gives you kind of a sense, both for the sort of the feeling of it when many, many people who upload from home come together like that. It's very touching, I think. And this testimony from so far away, but combined with people's sort of impromptu testimonies sharing what it is that they miss, it was very satisfying, and also helped me, because I'm here alone. It actually helped me feel really connected to people, which is, you know, part of what this is doing also for me, is keeping me in that aspect of my own community vitality. So there are a lot of the next week, chapter 5, there were a lot of people who started talking not about emotional states, but about cognitive problems. And I know McSweeney has a thing about this too, like what's an hour? An hour is anything between like 4 seconds and 9 hours or something. We all lose our sense of time. And so there were a lot of people who were contributing testimonies about that. And it was interesting because, of course, I was already playing with this idea of the different tempos of things, how I could use that to sort of create a propulsive texture. So I took that a little bit further in chapter 4, and I gave the players some material that was designed to kind of be in a basic tempo, but they had enough players so that I could just kind of use whichever ones of them managed to drive by each other at the same tempo. I also had a drummer who was able to lay down the equivalent of a tuning track, but was sort of like a groove track, so that people could go and listen to it. And if they wanted to, not to play with it, but to listen to it again and then to go away from it with that sort of that sense of tempo in their minds. Again, it was very open so that people could kind of contribute a variety of different sort of creative responses to things. I also, because I was, and you can take a listen to this later, I'm not going to include this part, but I got very excited because somebody actually said in the testimonies that week, they said, I feel like I'm going in reverse. So I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to write a canon that goes in retrograde. So I did that. So I write a canon that went in retrograde, which was kind of hard to piece together, but it was really fun to do that. So this is going to be a little bit of, I'm going to show you what the chapter 5 material looks like here. You can see that I basically leave a lot of freedom here. Half note beat of any noise you want. And here again, this is the violinist playing this, and all of the string players were invited to play these kinds of spiccato textures, just whatever tempos they felt like they wanted to do that. And these patterns, I asked them to try to make them be more or less in this tempo, but again, I used only the ones that happen to line up with each other. So you'll get a chance to sort of hear how that sounds. But this is basically testimonies all about losing track of time. This is going to be the last minute and a half or so of chapter 5.
What happens when we start? Simultaneously. Is this what happens? Only what happens? Is this what happens? Only what happens? Is this what happens? Only what happens? What
I loved it when I got that back. I was like, wow, I said different tempos, and she really went to town. That was great. So, you know, this is chapter 5. Today we posted chapter 8. and some of the things that, as I sort of got this process to work and really found a way to get the players to be collaborators and to come up with interesting things for me to use in the process of composing / editing, which is when all that stuff happens. And also a way through the prompts to get people to open up and to share testimonies like we've had now at this point, the contributors, if you count testimonies and voices together, have been around 130 people have contributed now in that way on the site, plus the chorus that came to me directly. So that's probably around 180 plus the musicians. So at this point, we're over 200 participants in the project now. And Next Fest is going to be involved as well. We're heading into the summer, so a lot of the groups that were working with me as part of their sort of curriculum, finishing out the semester that was interrupted. Now we're heading into the summer, and actually they're the sort of summer festivals. I'm going to have a community chorus from North Carolina, which is very exciting, as our guest, not for Chapter 9, but for Chapter 10. As we continue to not really know what's going on with our future as a community in various ways, I think it's something that I'm going to keep doing and keep looking at what people are saying and trying to sort of consolidate these testimonies into these chapters, bring everything I learn each week in my weekly meetings with the musicians to try to unleash our sense of being in touch with each other as we can, and our sense of being in touch with our music making, which is very important to me in my work on this project. So it's just fun talking to you about this. I wish you were all here in the room with me, but this is pretty good. So I think it would be great to see if there are questions here.
Yeah, I think this is just super exciting, and I'm so glad that we can share it with everybody. And like you mentioned, the festival itself, the next festival, is going to be a part of this. And I think one of the things that a lot of people are missing is that sense of making music together. And there's a lot of kind of solutions, quote unquote, where you can try and line up and jam with other people, but somehow, or make the Hollywood Squares click track videos, and that just feels somehow not really like making music together. And I'm just I think what you're doing is really fantastic. Thanks. In that way. And we're open to any questions that anybody wants to ask. Either put it in the chat or unmute yourself. It's a very powerful tool you have. Maybe
I already know your name. So.
That's right. Maybe while people are thinking of questions, because I think that there's so much to ask. As a composer, I'm really interested in your process. How do you think about what kind of things might work together, and how do you develop material that you can later assemble? And I know that you're leaving a lot open and a sense of community, which is also great, but do you think in terms of keys? Do you think in terms of
if I leave too much open, then I can't make a coherent and powerful kind of musical moment. If I lock it down too much, then it ends up being frustrating for the players and for me, because I'm trying to get it to fit inside a box. So I think it's been a learning process. I mean, we've been and the players have been great. I mean, it's been so wonderful to have players. A part of the process of collaborating on this, and we'll be doing this together, is that I have a meeting, a big Zoom meeting. We don't make any music in the meeting. We just talk about how we're going to make music in the meeting. And every group that participates has 2 meetings. So they have the meeting beforehand where we sort of say, okay, here's, and I share the parts. Sometimes after the meeting, I'll go back and change the parts and say, oh, okay, well, in that case, like I found out that, this kid didn't have a marimba at home, oops, whatever. So these parts get sort of, as I talk to the players, if they get a sense for, for where they're at, then sometimes I'll change it. But then also there's a meeting after the whole thing. So I have meetings tomorrow with the musicians who played this week, just sort of talk about, what did it feel like and how did it go? I'll tell them, look, if we work together again, you have to remember to let the sound die if you're going to record in your kitchen, because otherwise I have to, or whatever, things like that. So I think it's been a swerving path, you know, for me compositionally. I mean, I learn new things every week. It was kind of fun to share with you this sort of path that I went through with, you know, in chapters 4 and 5. I think between 3, 4, and 5, I learned a lot about how to put this together to make a sort of a compelling experience that was inspiring and exciting for the players, that was inviting for singers at all levels, and that also made me feel like I really, you know, that didn't make me want to tear my hair out on my weekly all-nighter that I put these things together, you know, and really left a lot of the discovery, you know, made sure that the discoveries happen at the right moments, at the right times in the process, you know, for them, for me, for everybody. So I think it's, you know, I know that's a little vague, but it has been, you're right. It's about material. It's about making sure that the materials I come up with are plastic enough, make sure that they're in short enough segments so that if I ask people to sing them or record them, I can take them apart from each other, you know, so that I don't use long phrases that, you know, that then I'll be frustrated because they are not plastic enough. But also allowing people to, you know, play their hearts out, you know, play their hearts out, because that's what we're missing. We're missing playing and singing our hearts out. So that's what's going to be useful to me. You know, I'll change the whole key if everything that, you know, if everybody who plays and sings their hearts out ended up doing the wrong notes, then those are the right notes now. So.
Right. I remember you told me a really great story about a woman who just was so completely out of tune, and you couldn't even see her whole face, but you ended up actually featuring that.
You heard her today, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You did hear her just now. Yeah.
We had a question from somebody who was sort of along those same lines, which is that how much do people feel like they're collaborating versus sending something out into the void? You know, what's the feeling of actual collaboration?
For whom? For
the contributors,
for the musicians,
for the singers, for the musicians
yeah.
who are recording themselves at home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I hear from a lot of people. I hear from a lot of people, and they are grateful and excited to have this. I get a lot of return customers from the singers out there in the world. I don't know who they are, but they come back. You know, there's a 74-year-old woman in Wisconsin somewhere who uploads her recordings every week, and you know, it's possible for people to reach out, and you know, the sense of community that I feel like I'm building with the musicians that I'm working with is something that I can be, you know, very hands-on with. Having these meetings before and afterwards, you know, sharing things, I share that with them in advance. There's a dialogue that happens over the weekend when everybody's recording their parts. So it's sort of fun. People discover things and they say, oh, you know, I did this. Oh, that was, you know. So I think the way to keep that process feeling less like it's going into the void is to let people in on the fact that we're doing something that hasn't really had to be done this way before. So the sense that we're all learning together is, I think, a way to feel like it's not going out of the void, because we're building something that we need each other for. And there are opportunities for them to say, well, I have this other idea. What about this? Or how about that? So to the degree that there are ways into various communities, right, all those communities I listed, the access from between communities, you know, through the project is something that I hope that we can continue to find ways to enhance. So.
And I also think one thing that's really moving and like fundamentally collaborative is that, you know, all of the texts themselves are crowdsourced. Yeah. Right. You're reacting to what people are feeling and saying. And do you feel like you have an idea ahead of time what people are going to say, or do you wait to hear what you're getting back to kind of determine?
Well, I'll tell you what's comforting. What's comforting is that a lot of things I'm feeling, because let's face it, I'm a human, so I'm going through this too, you know, and there's some weeks I'm like, I can barely get out of bed. So, you know, to read that people everywhere are experiencing things that I'm experiencing and that each other is experiencing, I think that has to be therapeutic for people to see that. Another thing that I've started to do, actually this is both in response to your question and also to the question that came just before that. In chapter 6, which I'm not going to play any of, but you can go check it out. Chapter 6, it's pretty dark. There was a testimony that was sent in by a woman in her late 70s in a very rural area where there are no stores really. And she has this amazing line, "We are dangerously old." It's basically a community where a lot of very old people live out in a rural area, and they sit 6 feet apart from each other outside the post office waiting for the mail. It's just incredible, impending dread. It's a feeling of dread. But she shared that story, and then I got my singer in her 70s contribute, singing the words of this woman that she doesn't know. A woman in her 70s in rural California writes a testimony. A woman in her 70s in Wisconsin sings that testimony. These women, heard that. They went, they were able to hear. If you write a testimony and I use it in the chapter, you're able to hear your words sung by many, many people that you don't know. And likewise, if you sing, then you can hear yourself back. And you're able to reach out to each other in this way. You hear yourself sing a duet with somebody who's like, on a different continent than you are, and this is the kind of thing that I'm hoping, that's actually unique to this situation, rather than trying to make it feel more like playing with a string quartet in the same room. Why try to approximate something, that isn't our situation here, when maybe what we can do is find ways to use the predicament that we're in to enhance our intimacy with each other through these various means. Questions? Guys are so shy.
Maybe for those of people who are not familiar with, Pro Tools or a digital audio workstation or how that works, you're getting little recorded fragments, right? So you get the texts, you make up musical phrases that relate to that in some way, give it a musical context.
Yes,
kind of crowdsource those. Then you get all these recordings back.
That's right.
Then can you just talk a little bit about your process once you get the little fragments?
Yeah, sure. I'll do that. I'll go back here to my Pro Tools actually and share that.
And by the way, thanks, because this is very nerdy. But I think people would be really interested in this.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
And just just to say that Lisa's using something called Pro Tools, but all of you have access to something which is quite similar, like GarageBand or Audacity. These are free programs that you can do the same kind of things with, just so everybody knows them.
Yeah, these are all, it's possible to use a variety of these. But here we go. We're back in this one here. So if you look, let's see, these are the tracks. These are all, I think it's 71 tracks in this one. These are all these different tracks. So these are every one of these, this is a person. Here's my friend Sadie. This is her son, Andrew. All right. And these are all of these singers from the University of South Florida. There's this woman, Bridget, who sent me a recording from Mexico. It was in totally the wrong key.
Lisa.
Yes.
Hey.
Hi.
Welcome back. I was just saying that it's very meta that we're having technological problems. And
this is why I use the methods I use, because this is exactly how I am with Zoom.
Right. I have a feeling that this is going to end up in next week's episode, actually.
Right, exactly. Right. That's right. So I was going to share this. This is when I started having my challenges. But hold on a second here. I'm going to share the screen so that you can see Pro Tools, if that's possible. It's giving me a little trouble. Well, in any case, let's see, share screen. Here we go. Okay, it's launching. That's what happened, is Pro Tools crashed. So now we know what happened.
I remember back in the 90s, there used to be a thing, Bill Gates had a dime for every time Windows crashed. Oh, wait, he does.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, the truth of the matter is, I would love to be able to show you that, but with 4 minutes left, and, so this happens all the time. There's 71 tracks in there. It crashes. But the point being that what happens is I have all these tiny little audio files, and they basically are like if you record yourself singing or playing into your cell phone or to something like that, and you just send me a bunch of sound files, which you can do at the website. The website actually has a portal where you can do this if you're a singer. If if you're one of the players participating, then it's different because you actually have access to me, to a special dedicated a dedicated box, where a Google mailbox where you can, a Google Drive where you can upload parts. But if you're just a person out in the world and you contribute your own vocal recording, then it's the website itself sort of pushes you through to a different portal, right? So here we are. I'm going to show you this. At the website, you're able to go into you go to your voices, and you're able to upload your voices there. And it takes you to a place where you fill out a form and you say where you are, you say how old you are, and then you are able to sing and upload your sound files, and I get them on the other end. So that's how that works. Yeah. Good.
That's great.
Yeah.
I wanted to pass on from the chat that that Jonathan Kramer
Oh,
was on this meeting. He had to
nice.
run, but he knew you when you were 12 years old,
Yes,
singing with a San Francisco Girls
that's
Choir.
true.
So,
He did. That's so funny. Wow.
Jonathan is a colleague of Nathan's and mine too.
Oh, that's
so,
great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Great. So if we don't have any other questions, I guess we can wrap up. I know that Lisa is really happy to talk more about this,
Yeah.
and either through me or through her website or her contact info, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer questions. And I would imagine she'd be very happy if you all participate too.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
sending in testimonials and doing recordings.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really fantastic.
No, if you're interested, and also, I mean, I think, one of the things that we're doing now is we are reaching out to choirs, because this is a really heartbreaking time for choirs. And I'm absolutely willing to do the extra work. If a choir wants to, just come on the project, as an entire group, then I will definitely get a fast track there and create a special portal for them. So.
Fantastic.
Great.
Great. Well, let me just say again, thanks so much, Lisa. This is super fascinating, and we can't wait to work with you. We're going to be the house band for episode 13.
Yes, can't wait.
Yeah.
Lucky 13.
Lucky 13. Well, and I think we start on a Friday, actually. But anyway.
That's right. Maybe.
Yeah, this is great. And also, Nathan and I are really looking forward to working with you. And I know that we really appreciate you and your sense of bringing people into the process.
Thanks.
And making it a communal experience. And you're right, that is what we're about here at the Next Festival too.
Yeah.
And so I want to invite everybody who attended today to keep on attending. We are going to have really amazing workshops coming up. On Tuesday, we have Jennifer Coe is doing a talk. Derek Burmell and Esama Ray are doing a fascinating talk about collaboration between dance and music. And then Vijay Iyer will be joining us, and we have lots of super secret great people who are coming up. So please do tune in. I'll be sending everybody a email after this with some of the links that Lisa's been talking about. Please do let us know if this is helpful for you. Let us know where you're listening from. If what we're doing makes a difference for you, that's really important for us to know and helpful. And please keep on tuning in. If you're able to make a contribution of any kind, we'd love to have your support, both in terms of money and in terms of knowing if this is important to you. So thanks again to Lisa, and we will see you the next time.
Thank you, everybody. This was really fun. Thanks for your nice notes. I see them in the chat. Thank you.
Great. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.